Happy Wednesday, Rocketeers. I'm going to get us started with our last day 2 of the year. I know it feels like several days ago, and that's because it was that we finished reading Midnight on the Moon. But that was chapter 10 that we read, I think, on Friday. And so now I'm going to go over the objective for that chapter. So day 2 is, remember, working with skills. It's not necessarily reading, but right now we are going to work on the objective that goes describing characters, settings, and major events in a story using key details. But we're going to identify how a character changes in the story, which is actually a step 5 thing that you work on when you're working on a step 5. And a lot of you did that already because many of you are at a step 5 or above. So that's great. But we're going to work on that today for those of you who are still working on that step 5. Okay, so how we do that is we think about character changes, how a character is different from the beginning of the story to an end of the story. So characters change. If characters stayed exactly the same, they probably wouldn't be super interesting. And I think the most interesting characters that I've read about in stories have always been characters that had a significant change from the beginning to the end of the story. They can either change like their feelings, their mental states, or their perspective. So things that they think about, they might have a change of heart. The problem, the attempts to resolve the problem, and the solution normally lead to character change. So you have to be able to identify that problem to be able to see that character change and figure out why did the character change. So let's keep going. So how do you do that? After reading, you're going to think about the character's thoughts. Do with me, the character's thoughts, the character's feelings, and the character's actions at the beginning of the story. And then you're going to think about think about the problem, there's a problem that the character faced and how they worked to solve the problem. So how did they resolve the problem? Think about the character's thoughts, feelings, and actions now at the end of the story. Then you're going to ask yourself, in what ways did the character's thoughts, feelings, or actions change? And ultimately, you're kind of asking yourself, what did the character end up learning at the end of the story? Remember, great readers notice how a character's thoughts, feelings, and actions change from the beginning to the end of the story to understand that deeper lesson learned. A lot of times that's how you figure out what that theme or that lesson or that message that you're supposed to be learning from the text is, by paying attention to that character change. So watch my thinking. I know that first I needed to notice the character's thoughts, feelings, and actions at the beginning of the story. And at the beginning, Jack and Annie felt confused about how to solve Morgan's curse because they weren't sure where the fourth M object was. They also felt excited to go to the moon base and explore the surface of the moon because they wanted to find the fourth M object. So those were those feelings, those thoughts, those actions that they did at the beginning of the story. Next, I know that I need to think about the character's problem and how it was solved. I already figured out that Jack and Annie could not figure out how to find the fourth M object in order to save Morgan. But I know this is a real problem for them because they can't return home until they had found the fourth M object. But once Morgan guided the Moon Man to help them by giving them that space map, remember the map of the mouse, they were able to understand that the fourth M object was really Peanut the mouse. So finally, I know that I need to think about the character's thoughts, feelings, and actions at the end of the story. So I already thought about them at the beginning. I thought about the problem, and I'm thinking about the end of the story. At the end, Jack and Annie are relieved to find out that Morgan has been freed from her curse, and they're excited to finally be able to return home to Frog Creek Woods. So now I'm going to put all of those thoughts together, and at first, Jack and Annie were curious and excited to begin a new adventure on the moon in search of the fourth M object, but they were confused about how to do that. By the end of the story, Annie and Jack were grateful to Morgan and the Moon Man for helping them discover the fourth M object was really Peanut the mouse. And they're also relieved to be going home. So I'm going to give you some questions, and I really want you to pay attention to those thoughts, those feelings, and those actions at the beginning of the story. Think about the problem, and then think about how those things changed as the characters developed, as things happened at the end of the story. And I'm going to have you do that for chapter 10. So I know it's been a few days, so I'll try to post some text with the questions. That way you have something to reference. But I know you guys have great memories, and so many of you really liked this book. So I'm hoping you remember a lot from the story. But I'll definitely put in some pieces of the book and ask you some questions. So thank you guys. Keep working hard. We only have a few more days. The rest of my videos, I'm just going to be reading books for fun. I'm going to find some fun books for you guys at the end of the year. Normally I read a lot of books for fun towards the end. And I want to make sure you guys have a good last week. Friday is your last day of instruction. Give yourself some sparkles. You're almost done with first grade. Super excited. All right, guys, make sure you click on the Google form or Google Doc and do your Google form and do your work for today. Thanks, guys.